Hi, everybody. My name is Erinma Adaeze. I'm an artist, curator, and editor of Ivory Circus Magazine. Today, we have another episode of Ivory Circus Studios, and I'm joined by Sammy Jean. She's an amazing acrylic and mixed media artist based in Newark, New Jersey, and she traveled all the way to Brooklyn to come show us some of her work. So we're so excited to have her here in the studio. So let's get into it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
I'm
having
so excited to
me.
talk more about your work.
Right.
I guess for the purposes of like the camera, we can talk a little bit about like how you started in art, how we know each other. So what's your journey been like working in art and working independently too?
Right. So let me start with how I know you. So we interned together at the Studio Museum of Harlem, and I was in their development department. And what department were you in?
I was in communications.
Communications, right. So I dabbled a little bit in there to get like the professional experience in the museums. It was something. Um, but now like I just branched out into my own practice. I've just been focusing on like my self growth and my journey, and I just express that through the art essentially. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I hit you up for this, you were talking about obviously taking your art seriously for a while, but in the last few months, been doing art full time. Like, what's that
Yes.
difference been like?
I'm not gonna lie, it's stressful. It's stressful because how do I put it? Like art in itself is very fulfilling, but then in this economy, you're wondering like how am I gonna make money? But it's also like just trust the process and whatever comes out of it, it'll be fulfilling in the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been like your experience, but people around you, like, have you
Mhm.
seen support change in any way now that you're fully like full-time artist?
Yes and no. So like my circle, like they've known me. They're the ones who've pushed me to actually start pursuing art and being more serious about art. But like family, I'm Haitian. So they look at me painting all day and they're like, "What are you doing?" Like they don't really get it because that's not what they've come from. That's not the culture they've come from. So like I can't even be mad at them because it's all they've known. You know what I mean? But you just have to trust in yourself and continue the process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. I feel like that's a good outlook to have. And I mean, I feel you. Like, it's one thing to have the passion of art propel you, but it's nice to have some bread propel you too.
Right.
So I think it's nice that you've struck a balance. You have the
Yeah.
support around you too.
Right.
Has your work changed at all now that you're like full time versus when you were making time for art outside
Mhm.
of work and school and everything?
I feel like now that I'm full time, I could really dive into it. Cause like before, it's like, oh, whenever I have time, I can like squeeze in some time to do some art, or like, oh, I can rush and finish this for the next show. But now I can really like take my time and like dive into the process and appreciate the process. You know what I mean? And like make something that I can be proud of instead of like finishing something and it's like, I don't really like it, but I'll go with it because I need something. You know what I mean?
So you've been showing recently
I
this summer. You've
have.
actually on world tour, I
Stop.
believe. You're mainly showing with the art walk,
The
but the
art
art
walk.
walk has been traveling a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit
Yes.
about those shows?
Okay, so I started with the art walk last year. Like I feel like that's the first like official group that I showed with. So shout out to the art walk. So my first show actually was with the Newark Public Library. So one of my friends reached out and she's like, "Do you want to show work?" And I was like, I might as well. So it was my first time actually showcasing work. And one of the collaborators with the art walk was there. So she scouted me for the art walks and like ever since I've just been doing the art walks with them, doing the art walks with them, meeting all the other creatives. And then Abby reaches out, which is another one of the art walk collaborators, and she's like, "Guys, like I have a connection in London. Like, do you guys want to go to London?" And I was like, "London? Me? What do I mean London?" So yeah, I ended up showing some work in London. So that was really nice. That was different because it was my first time in Europe. So for me to sit there and be like, my art brought me to Europe, that's crazy. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's a beautiful
Thank
thing.
you.
In Europe, did you find your work being received differently by people who came out to the show? Like, how did it change the way you thought about your practice being out there?
Actually, no. That's what I was actually surprised about. I was afraid that people wouldn't really get it.
Mm.
But like the part of London that we were in, it was pretty diverse. So a lot of people were coming from different backgrounds. So like they were understanding where I was coming from as well. So like I feel like it was a little surreal for me. It was cool to see.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to how so many of the themes you talk about in your work are universal
Universal.
and span outside of Newark where
Hmm.
you started.
Right.
So can you tell me a little bit about some of the themes that you're working with more recently and like some of your more recent pieces?
So let me see. Do I have one? This is actually one of the recent ones, actually. Well, my favorite one, let's say. And this one, it talks about me balancing my masculine and feminine energy. And that's a theme that I try to indulge in and go into in a lot of my pieces. Because I feel like it's an ongoing process. Healing is an ongoing process. You know what I mean? So to be able to express that in the art and then seeing people receive that as well is very interesting to see. and just, going through life and like finding a way to express that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
How has your personal journey been with like balancing feminine, masculine energies?
Girl. Like as black women, they're always like, you're too masculine, you're too assertive, you're too this, you're too that. So like the piece that's back there, I'll probably show you guys later. It's, I call it the divine feminine, not the divine feminine, but the dark feminine. There you go. So it's like exploring how to be feminine doesn't necessarily mean you have to, you have to be soft, and like while it does mean that, but it also can be like the dark parts that people shame. So like, oh, being too masculine, what does that really mean? You know what I mean? So it's like, just because I'm confident, just because I'm strong, just because I'm this doesn't mean I'm still not feminine. So it's finding the balance between those 2.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I am wondering for you, like you talk about your experience as a black woman and
Hmm.
that common association with masculinity. Where
Hmm.
does like your Haitian heritage play into that? Is it different when you talk about family, or how is it complicated by that identity?
Girl, I feel like it's even worse. It's even worse. Like my mother has always taught me, like, you don't need a man, you're independent, you can do everything by yourself. But like when you really sit back and think about it, when you're going through things and you're like, I have to be independent, I have to be independent, like you forget about community. Like you forget that there are people out there that are willing to help you. There are people out there who want to help you, but you're so busy trying to be independent that you're putting yourself in this little corner and you're not getting the help that you need. So like I feel like that's a flaw in our community that we have to address sometimes.
Yeah, and I'm
Hmm.
glad that you've at least branched out and I think found a community where you're able to like share candidly, like whether it's through artists or just how you end up meeting people through your work. So
Right.
I'm glad that see you've kind of broken out of that even like an
Right. Just
inch.
a little
But
bit, just a little bit.
yeah, I can definitely I feel like being preached to be hyper independent can definitely throw off the energies even
Absolutely.
more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I know in your work this is about feminine and masculine energy, but
Hmm.
more broadly, where does spirituality come in?
Yeah, so I feel like I started my spiritual journey during quarantine. So when everybody was just losing their mind in quarantine, I was like, all right, let's get my head right again. Let's figure out what's going on. So that's really when my journey started of trying to figure out, okay, let's balance the masculine, let's balance the feminine, and like overall, let's just try to find a balance and be grounded. Because during quarantine, nobody knew what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. I was just trying to figure out what was happening. I didn't think we were gonna make it back outside again.
Mhm.
So it's like just trying to find something to ground you again, because a lot of people have lost touch with that, and it's good to kind of just recenter yourself.
Yeah. I guess outside of your art practice, what is spiritually grounding for you?
I'm an earth sign, so I like to go outside. Like I like to spend time outside, just find time to like meditate. um if I'm not painting, because I also see that as a sign of meditation, like I'll just actually sit and meditate, sit with myself, like breathing exercises. That's just been a big thing for me to like recenter and like find things that I genuinely love doing, and spending time with myself, because a lot of times you get lost in the crowd and that could be very overstimulating, you know what I mean? So a lot of times I'll just take that minute, a little minute to hermit, like get back in my little shell for a minute and then come back out when I'm ready.
When it comes to painting being like a grounding practice for
Hmm.
you, where do you usually paint? What's your process like? Like if we're coming with you to your studio, like what are we gonna see?
You guys are coming to my bedroom. You're coming to my bedroom. Like my bedroom has been like a safe space for me. So especially because that's where I create, like that's where I can just hermit again. So like it's literally my bedroom, a little corner in my bedroom. Like I've literally set aside a space for my art and I dedicate that to the art.
Yeah, that's real. I mean, I definitely make my work out in my room too,
Right.
but I like that you've transformed into a proper like safe space, regardless if it is your
Right.
bed's a few inches there. But you kind of made a differentiation between your brand, your studio, and you as an artist.
Hmm.
What's the difference there, and what can you tell us about For Butter?
Yes. So for buta, that's actually
Oh,
you're,
can I
you're
say it
good. You're
again?
good. You're buta buta.
Buta.
Yes, like boot.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so actually that comes from my childhood nickname. So like as a kid, I never knew how to pronounce anybody's name right. So I would just call everybody Buta 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 Buta. So that ended up becoming my nickname. So I ended up making that my brand name, and it stands for beauty under the art. And since a lot of my art has to do with like my life and trials and tribulations, I thought it just made sense to bring that all together. But my brand overall is an ode to my inner child, so it's part of that healing. It's dedicating a part of myself to like genuinely going after the things that I want. So whether that's travel, whether that's the art, whether that's just like expressing myself to the public, because I'm a very sheltered person. Like you could ask me like last year, I didn't think I would be sitting here right now.
Yeah. Can you tell us about like a particularly like nerve-wracking experience when it came to
Mm.
you as an artist, especially now you're showing more and kind
Mm-hmm.
of meeting new people?
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of a specific one. London had to be a big one. London had to be a big one. Granted, like I didn't have to make any big speeches this time around, so that was cool, but it was still just terrifying because it's like sometimes I still can't even speak about my art to people in Newark, let alone people in London. So it's like I was kind of afraid that it wouldn't translate the way I wanted it to. But like once I started to have those conversations with people and like understand other people's backgrounds and other people's stories, because like when I meet these people, we actually start deep diving into people's lives. Like I never expected that. So it's just a matter of being open to hearing other people's perspectives, and even if they challenge my perspectives, being open to that as well.
That's something I really like when it comes to meeting artists. I think there's like a natural vulnerability when you start talking to somebody about their artwork because
Mhm.
it is so personal to them.
Mhm.
I find it breaks the ice a lot of the time.
Mhm.
And I'm somebody who loves to meet artists, like just off being an artist myself, and
Right.
obviously for this
Right.
too. But how do you go about finding like minded people in the art world?
And then like all the other artists that join in, they find the art walk. So it's a matter of just being in those spaces and being open in those spaces. And I'm not even gonna lie, sometimes I hermit, but people still end up finding me because they see the work, they relate to the work, and they wanna know more. So it's just being open to talking to those people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, I mean, them finding you is like the ideal situation.
I
I love
know,
that for
I
you.
know. Like a lot of my work has to do with my personal stories, and coming from my background, they're like, be strong, don't show that you're weak, don't show this, don't show that. And a lot of that is in the art. So like I would keep it to myself, it would be in my bedroom, and people are like, wait, Sam, like you should show people this stuff. And I'm like, but with that, I have to be open to telling people like how I got here.
Mhm.
So it's just a matter of being okay with being vulnerable and understanding that it's okay to be a little, like open. Like not everybody's gonna judge you, and the people who do judge you, you're not for them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Do you have any pieces in particular that were very vulnerable to share, to create?
Probably Flicted. That's the first one I showcased. It's the blue one right there. That was a big one because it actually was. I was still in school during that time, and I had just recently added my art minor. So this was my first time professionally taking art classes because I'm self taught. So this was my final. That was my final project. And when she reached out and she was like, "Show this, show this," I was like, "Okay, cool." But that piece was kind of deep, and I was like, should I? And my friends were like, you should. And I was like, okay. Yeah, because this one essentially talks about overconsumption. So whether that be social media, whether that be, vices or whatever that may be, overconsumption and how it's like self-inflicted, but it's also inflicted by society. So during that time, I felt like I was very, how do I explain it? I felt very like disconnected. So to show that and like be open with people, like, yeah, I felt very disconnected. Like, what? Like, you know what I mean? I felt like people would look at me crazy. Like, go see the lady, you know what I mean? But like people saw it and they're like, wait, like this is hard. Like, we get it, we get it. And it's like finding that community and people telling you they get it. Like that's surreal, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's what it's for. That's what it's
Right.
about. But it's intimidating when you're going out on a limb before everybody says they get it to know, like, people are going
Exactly.
to get this. Yeah. I guess you were talking a little bit about obviously loving your work, but
Mhm.
also selling it. What work has been hard to part with?
All of them. I feel like they're my babies. So like every time somebody is like, "Hey, I want this piece," I'm like, "You sure?" A little on me, you want this, but like it also just feels so good because I'm like, someone is willing to pay to have my work. Like this is crazy. Like I used to just doodle in notebooks, and like people actually want this stuff. So it's really cool to see, Because my goal was never to show my work in terms of like making money and da 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 da. Like I really just wanted to show it for the sake of spreading the message. Cause like a lot of times you feel lonely, you feel like isolated in your healing, but like a lot of other people, they're going through it as well, and they need to see that people are going through it with them. So I felt like it was just good to share it and see what comes out of it. And I still have that mindset. Like I never intended to sell my work until people were like, why don't you have prints? Like I want this. Like why aren't you selling this? I'd buy it. And I was like, okay, well,
If
if,
I must.
if y'all want it.
I want to say congratulations.
Thank
You just shared
you.
that you're showing at Newark Art
I
Museum.
am for Newark Arts Fest.
What was that like when you got that yes?
It's
And
crazy, crazy. Because I literally used to always visit the Newark Museum on like school field trips, and it's like, wow, like seeing the art and admiring the art is one thing, but being the art in the museum, like that's different. and like my inner child is screaming because literally the little girl would just be in there like, oh, this is nice, this is nice, oh my gosh. But now I'm like, I'm there, like I'm part of this. It's crazy.
Definitely.
Mhm.
I think it's amazing that your hometown is like showing you this love
It's
also
crazy.
so early.
Right.
But do you have, I guess, in your wildest dreams, where do you want your art to take you?
In the city, at least. I know I'm thinking.
You talked a lot about your work being inspired by kind of just like your personal journey,
Mhm.
spirituality, but do you have inspirations of other artists?
Y'all gonna hate me when I say this. Basquiat, Basquiat, yeah. Because growing up, like in my art classes, because I went to very STEM focused schools, so art it was very much art, elective art. So they would all often teach you about Starry Night, Mona Lisa.
Mhm.
But then in high school, I was just taught about Basquiat for the first time, and he has a Haitian background, so I was locked in. I was like, but it was like my first time really seeing someone that looked like me doing art. So because I never really saw that representation of Black artists, so that's when I started doing the deep dive into Black artists, and I was like, wait, this is it. Like this is my thing, and it's just been up from there.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's amazing. I know it's a technically like he's so popular now, it's a
Yeah,
cliche answer,
yeah.
but I'm glad that that was still a source of inspiration for you. How do you balance taking your time
Hmm.
and letting your emotions flow through and
Hmm.
having that very, I think, traditional idea of an artist of like,
Hmm.
you move when moved and that vibe, but
Right.
also getting ready for shows,
Hmm.
selling, and
Hmm.
working in like 2024 kind of on a commercial basis? Like, how do you balance
Hmm.
those two extremes?
So I make prints of the pieces that I have for that reason, because I know like if I have a piece and it's not going to be done, let's at least have the archives out and ready to go. But like if it comes to like if I know I have a show coming and I want to have a new piece for the show, then like I'll just lock in. So it's like sometimes you'll be painting for hours and hours, and it's like I'm tired of this, grandpa. And it's like like just lock in, let's finish it. Like all nighters, do what you need to do, let's get it done.
I'm wondering because I this is something I'm writing about for the issue right now, like
Hmm.
this balance of being an artist, but then also being your own manager and being in
Hmm.
charge of like the sales of things.
Hmm.
Do you ever feel what's your feeling on those days where you might not really want to paint or you might
Hmm.
not want to be painting all night? Like
Hmm.
what mindset are you in where you kind of move away from the traditional
Hmm.
like just painting what you feel and when you feel like it
Hmm.
versus cranking something out maybe more towards a deadline?
Hmm. So when it comes to that, because there are times where you don't feel like painting, but then you have to remember, like you said, the business side of things. So like I have my website. If I don't feel like painting, I'll lock in and focus on fixing up the website or doing something in that sense. Or like if somebody's asking me about this, like I'll reach out to them. Like you know what I mean? Like the real business sides of things. Because sometimes you don't want to do that. Like if I'm painting, I don't want to talk to people. I want to paint.
You said that you like to be constantly busy.
Hmm.
Has that ever been to your detriment that you don't like to sit still?
Burnout happens.
Talk about it.
Yeah, burnout and like getting through burnout is another thing entirely, because now it's like I want to do this but I'm so tired, and I need to do this but I'm so tired. So it's like finding time to rest is still being productive, y'all. Like very important actually. Like you don't want to overwork yourself to the point where it's like now you don't even have energy to do the work. So finding that balance as well.
How do you recharge?
Obviously, since I'm not painting, like spending time with your loved ones. Like they're the ones rooting you on, they're the ones there for you all the time, so you can't just be locked up painting all the time. Finding time with them, uh finding time with yourself, just recentering.
Something I found that's been really helpful for me
Hmm.
with recentering is it's nice to spend time with friends,
Hmm.
but I really, especially now that I've been working more in art, I
Hmm.
really value my friendships with people who aren't in art at all.
Hmm.
Like it's
Agreed.
refreshing in conversation to like
Agreed.
not even talk about it or you say something and they don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
I live for that. Honestly, I think it's really refreshing. Have you found
Hmm.
the same?
Yeah, like my close friend group, for the most part, like they are creative people, but they're not doing like art full time. So like just being able to be with them, like guys, and like just actually relax and be a 23-year-old girl without stressing. You know what I mean? Just kicking back and actually being like, okay, let's live, let's slow down.
I think in your art spaces, I mean, I
Hmm.
think a lot of us are young,
Hmm.
but I think as you get more into the professional bag, you're
Hmm.
working with museums and
Hmm.
galleries. Do you think about your age at all, or is it brought up to you?
Sometimes, yeah, because actually with the art walk, I feel like I'm one of the youngest of the group. So at times, like when I'm stressed and I feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, I remember like I'm still young. Like it's okay. Like we have time, Sam. Like slow down. Stop trying to beat the clock. Like relax. So it's like it's just interesting to see is because it's like you get to learn from the older people as well. And like they're kind of like mentoring you in a way. So I find like the pros and cons in that, you know?
Yeah. Do you find yourself at this stage in your artistic career like seeking mentorship or looking to anybody for advice?
Just my peers, honestly. So like I told you, like the art walk heads there, it's a bunch of different people from different backgrounds. So a lot of times like I'll ask them like what they do for this, or if somebody's working with a medium I've never worked with before, I'll ask them like how do you go about using that, and just picking up everything I can from those people. And even if it's not like people from the art walk, like when I go to events and if I see a piece I like, I'll ask them about, you know, their process and how they got here, or like what's their background, like what are they doing right now, just learning from everybody that I can, honestly. And seeing where like my spirit guides me in the journey and taking that as it is, um seeing how much more I can spread my message to people, diving into the social media for real, because it's necessary.
Necessary evil.
And it's funny because I actually have a background in marketing, but it's like so hard for me to market myself because of that vulnerability. So really just diving into that and seeing where else I can go with it.
To wrap up, we do a segment here at Ivory Circus called Gallery Talk, where we get to put you on to some artists that we think you may like.
Okay.
So I have two visual artists for you, and then we'll play some music as well. And just want to get your thoughts. This the whole idea is to pour back into you and kind of offer you some inspiration. So just want to get your thoughts on them.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I have a few. As you were talking, there's a particular work by this artist named Priscilla Kennedy based in Ghana that I think you'd really like. I'm just going to pull up some images. I've saw her work most recently at a solo exhibition at the Nubuke Foundation. This was about last year, but since then, I think she's branched out into a few other mediums as well. I was thinking about it particularly because you have a work that incorporates yarn, and she's done a little bit of textile work mixed in with her painting.
And that's all yarn.
So it's on textile and then I believe painted over. Yeah, beads, sequins, glow-in-the-dark threads with cutouts on embroidered kente. This is another one of her work. She does a lot with like the female body as well.
That's dope.
Yeah, really interesting to like installation views.
Ooh, I love the textures. Wait a minute.
I'm priding myself on giving good recommendations.
Yeah.
This is Floating Dolphins 2023. But yeah, more recently has been working with textile, which I find interesting.
No, textile artists are a different type of talented.
Yes, it's Priscilla Kennedy. So I'll send this to you. Hopefully
Yes,
it'll
please.
serve as some inspiration for you. And I also have these are both Ghanaian artists. Awa Sega was actually, I curated her for my first show, and she does mainly graphic, like digital artwork. She also draws a lot of inspiration from music, which I find interesting. So she'll like kind of turn lyrics on their head.
Right.
This is Daily Bread. This is one of my favorite works by her.
This is dope.
And she talks a lot with deals a lot with the economic issues in Ghana in particular. Just national budget.
Yep.
Yeah, and I also think has kind of a spiritual air to some of her work too. So yeah.
You could feel it. Where are you? Hey, wait a minute.
Okay, good. I was nervous because it's like I don't want you to feel like, okay, you're on camera, so you know how to be like, I love it.
My brain is already.
I hope the wheels are turning.
They're turning.
Okay. You listen to Santi Gold?
A little bit.
Okay. This is Shove It by Santi Gold featuring Spank Rock. I just want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your stories, sharing your work, and honestly just being a source of inspiration for me long before this interview, long before you're full time now. So thank you so much for being here. It's so special to be able to talk to you about your work.
Thank you for having me.
Catch her if you can,
Right.
honestly. Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.